Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pressing Matters. I'm Scott. Thank you for tuning in today, and thank you for your support. Today I'm going to be covering one of the classic living stereo titles, that is Bartok's Concerto Fro Orchestra by Fritz Reiner and the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I have several versions to compare, so stay tuned for that. Before I get started, if you're new, think about subscribing. If you like what I do, please hit like, subscribe, and notification, and you'll be sure to get notified of any new content that comes up. Also, thank you to all the people who have contributed to the fundraiser listed below. It's called Buy Me a Coffee. You can check out the details in the description box below. Several people have contributed. We're on our way to meeting the goal, so thank you so much for doing that. The reason I decided to do this video today was I was in a discussion forum last night, and we were talking about the analog production reissues, and some people were discussing this particular one. I don't have that yet, but I probably will get it, even though I have 4 copies already of this album. It's that good, so you really need to have a copy of this in your collection, and I'll tell you the differences in the few versions I have, which are an original Shaded Dog, the Plum Label Victrola, the Classic 33, and the Classic 45. So as the discussion went on, I said, let me compare these for the people on the forum, give them my impressions. And I said, you know what, let me do a video on it because I have the information at hand. So the first one is a rather... it's in pretty good shape, but it's taped together. This is a hard one to get a great original of, but I have a Shaded Dog. It's an Indianapolis pressing. It's not a 1S. It's a 10S, 9S pressing, but the Shaded Dogs are known for their lush, warm, tubey sound. And this has that in spades. And this really is significant with this album because of the strings. There's a lot of mass strings in this album. The string tone is very important to get right. And when you first hear an original pressing, it is bathed in a tubey glow. The strings have a very lush, never strident, never harsh sound to them. And it's very attractive. And the whole album has that glow about it because these were mastered on tube equipment and recorded with tube equipment. So it's something that of living stereo adherents really love about the original pressings. The thing about the original pressings is they are also compromised in some ways. The bass response, overall clarity sometimes suffers, and it's a little bit of a trade-off for that warm sound versus clarity and detail and bass response. And this was the case with this comparison as well. But when I put it on, even though it's not in the greatest of shape, there is a few ticks and pops. The sound, that lush sound came through in spades. And I could appreciate that audiophiles and music lovers at the time treasure this album because it's excellent, excellent sound. Of course, the music is very, how do you say it? Well, that opening statement from the orchestra is all strings, and it's very moody and ethereal. You know, it's kind of a misty sound to begin with, and that lush, bathed in tube glow sound enhances that. So that's how most people originally heard this record. The second edition that came out was this one, and this is I love these. I really do. This was a really nice series. Sometimes the vinyl is not quite as quiet, but often it is. And this is a first pressing Plum Label. I really like the consistency of the jackets and the artwork with the drawings and stuff. I have a whole collection of them. You can find these for pennies usually. And they are done just as well. This is pressed at Indianapolis. It's a 1S pressing. Beautiful, and in great shape, much better shape than the original. And it retains the tube sound. It has the same glow and the same limitations as the original. Yeah, I was talking about the art. They always have a beautiful drawing, and it's a textured sleeve. I really like them. The original liner notes on the back. They're worth picking up if you see them, especially the 1S Plum Label pressings. UK pressings may be even better, and they have some really attractive covers as well. I found the sound to be cleaner than the original, but still bathed in that glow. The string still had the glow. The overall sound lacked a little bit of clarity, and that became especially evident when I went on to the next pressing. But overall, a lovely, warm analog experience. Just great, and a nice alternative to the original. So that is that one. The third one is Bernie Grundman's original Classic Records cut. Now this one, it's a limited edition. They stickered the original. I was an original subscriber to the series. I got all 10 of the first reissues, and I remember when these came out. It was a big event. It was a really big event. I was at an interesting little story. I was in New York, and one of the radio stations was getting out of vinyl, and they were having a huge sale of all their vinyl, and it became a big thing. There was lines of people there, and people coming out with armfuls of vinyl. Everything was $1. And of course I thought, oh, I'm going to go in and find some living stereo titles. Well, no, I didn't. Actually, I left empty-handed, because at that time I was only looking for audiophile, stuff, Mercury and RCA Living Stereo. And I probably missed a lot of good things, but at that event, someone was passing out these little cards for classic records, and it had the first 10 titles in the original, artwork, which was unusual, and a facsimile of the original label. It's not quite as the shading, as you can see, is not quite as feathered out. It's not feathered out at all. But it was nice to have something like this at the time. These were mastered by Bernie Grundman. The 33s, the first 33s were done on two transistor equipment. So these offered a different sound. I put this on after the first two, and that tubey glow is sort of gone. But there are benefits as well. The clarity is much, much better. It's like it removed a layer of mud from the recording. Individual details, space in the sound stage, tonality of the instruments, everything was better. A deeper bass response. The only thing about this pressing that, depending on the system, could be an issue is the strings. And because it's an important album for strings, the strings need to sound right, but they are a little brighter. The clarity overall brings out a little more brightness in the strings. I wouldn't say they're steely, I just say they are brighter. But the trade-off is an excellent window onto the music and much more overall immersion in the sound. The bass response is deeper. That ominous bass that opens the record is there and you can experience it more fully. I think it's a good pressing. When I had transistor equipment in my chain, the strings did come off a little too much, a little too bright. Now that I have all tube equipment, it sounds much better. So, you know, I don't think you can make a blanket statement. It all depends on the system. But at the time these transistor cuts came out, that was the main criticism, that the strings were a little too steely. The last one that I have is the classic 45. This comes on 4 records, which I'm kind of glad they abandoned this format. So yeah, 4 records for 1 record. Each one is one-sided, so there's a blank side on the other side, and you can use that to set your VTA or something. But at the time, it was a big deal to have 45 cuts. This kind of started the whole 45 craze. And the 45, to my knowledge, is cut with tube equipment. So the sound is a little different than the 33. It still retains most of the clarity. I mean, all of the clarity. Just dials back the brightness on the strings just a bit to make it a more pleasant listen. And of all 4, this is my favorite. I don't love that it's split up into 45 though, because Concerto for Orchestra is kind of a continuous work. The sections are not explicitly structured. I suppose there is an official stop point for the first movement and so on, but I always see it as a continuous, 20-minute experience on each side. And even though it's cut at a good point to flip sides, it's a little too much flipping for a record like this. But overall, the sound is the best on this one of all the copies that I have. It makes the original pressing sound like old records, with the compromises of old records. This one has everything that you would want. Brass instruments cut through, but they're not too harsh. The strings are very vivid, but not harsh. The space is more well defined. You can sense the space of orchestra hall. Instrument tonality is excellent, and overall it's the most immersive listen of all of them. Now, would the Analog Productions 33 be a good choice? I don't know yet. I'm going to find out, but because I've been slowly buying those as they come back into print, and I do want to get this one because I think that based on their track record, they will dial back the steely strings of the 33 classic and present it more in a more lush way, but with the clarity intact and the 2 sides intact instead of over 4 sides. So I think it's going to be a winner. I will let you know as soon as I find out, but the classic 45 is excellent, and all of them are great, but take your choice. If your system tends towards analytical, you may want to get like one of the earlier pressings. If you have one that's a little warmer and has more tubes in the chain, you may want to get one of the classics, and I would suggest a 45. But that's my take on it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Until next time, I'm Scott for the Press It Matters. Have a good day.